they're saying that the smear campaign is still going on.
Blake Lively didn't just stumble in June 2025, she threw herself off a legal cliff in designer heels. The judge looked her dead in the eye and essentially told her to stop turning his courtroom into a circus act. This wasn't some misunderstood celebrity mishap. It was a full-blown meltdown involving 3 denied motions in a single week. Her once pristine image is currently buried under a mountain of lawsuits and public criticism that paints a picture of a woman completely out of touch with reality. She isn't fighting for justice anymore. She is fighting for a narrative that is slipping through her fingers like sand. The rom-com darling we all knew is gone, replaced by a legal wrecking ball with a god complex that even Hollywood can't ignore.
Blake Lively's team keep writing the judge, I think probably 3 to 4 times a day at this point.
The transition from being America's sweetheart to a legal wrecking force didn't happen overnight, but the mask finally slipped during her conflict with Justin Baldoni. What started as creative differences on a film set spiraled into a multi-state legal war that has left everyone in the industry exhausted. Blake's team has been bombarding the court with letters and motions, sometimes filing 3 or 4 times in a single day. It's a relentless attempt to maintain control at any cost, even if it means destroying her own reputation in the process. She's not just litigating, she's performing, and the performance is quickly turning into a tragedy. Behind the scenes, the smear campaign she allegedly fabricated is finally coming back to haunt her in ways she never expected.
Yeah, as I said, we definitely know they planted stories about Justin Baldoni, for sure.
The core of this disaster is her deep-seated obsession with control, a trait that insiders say has become a full-blown obsession. When Justin Baldoni refused to follow her every whim during the production of their film, Blake didn't just get upset, she went to war. She began serving subpoenas like they were party invitations, dragging people into courtrooms from New York to Georgia just to inflict maximum pain on her former collaborator. Legal experts are calling it a narcissistic injury where she simply cannot let go of the fact that she didn't get her way. Instead of resolving things like an adult, she decided to use the legal system as a weapon to damage Baldoni's career. But the problem with throwing gasoline on a fire is that eventually, you're the one who gets burned.
I'm just going to say it from day one. I don't think she's going to go to trial. I don't think she wants to go to trial. I don't think the purpose of this is to go to trial. I think the purpose of this is to damage Baldoni and get back at him as much as she can, to inflict as much pain on him as possible.
The sheer audacity of her legal strategy is what really has the industry buzzing right now. Blake didn't just sue Baldoni, she went on a nationwide tour of nonsense, filing subpoenas across multiple jurisdictions like she was on a press junket. It's as if she spun a globe and decided to harass anyone who ever worked with her. The courts are visibly exhausted, and Judge Lewis Lyman has aged 5 years just reading her ridiculous motions. Just this past June, he denied her 3rd motion to compel in 1 week, effectively telling her that her legal antics are transparent and unwelcome. She's not trying to prove a case, she's trying to generate enough noise and chaos to distract people from the fact that her entire strategy is built on a foundation of absolute delusion.
Time they're just asking the judge for new favors. I thought this was quite interesting.
Then there's the Bonsai Incorporated situation, which feels more like a fever dream than a legitimate legal move. Blake actually filed a lawsuit through this shell company against absolutely nobody. That's right, she literally sued the void with no named defendants. It's the kind of move that makes legal experts scratch their heads and ask if she's actually losing her grip on reality. You have to be deeply delusional to walk into a courtroom and argue into an empty room just to make a point. This wasn't a strategic masterclass. It was a public tantrum formatted into a PowerPoint. It gives off the energy of a middle schooler who didn't get the lead in the play, but with an actual team of high-priced lawyers enabling the drama at every turn.
Feels very much like a narcissistic injury where she just can't let go and she needs to blame someone else for her mistakes. But all of that to say, I also think that
as the court battles raged, a much darker story began to emerge regarding the PR mess surrounding the film's premiere. Suddenly, headlines started appearing in TMZ and the Daily Mail claiming that Justin Baldoni had fat-shamed Blake and acted inappropriately on set. For a few days, Blake looked like the victim, but then the truth started to leak out. Those stories didn't come from some anonymous whistleblower. They reportedly originated from a meeting held in Blake and Ryan Reynolds' own apartment. Only a handful of people were there, making it painfully obvious who was feeding the tabloids. She was holding the match and the gasoline, trying to set Baldoni's career on fire to shield her own fragile image. It was a calculated move that backfired in the most public way possible.
saying that the smear campaign is still going on. So Blake Lively's team was asking for communication going over a much longer period of time than what actually Baldoni's team have been offering them. They're saying that they can give them communications from June 2024 to December 2024. But it gets...
The level of manipulation involved in this smear campaign is truly staggering when you look at the receipts. Blake's team was allegedly asking for communication spanning a massive period of time, hoping to find anything they could use to bury Baldoni. They even tried to drag his legal representatives into the conspiracy, claiming his lawyers were the ones running a press war against her. There was no evidence, no receipts, just vibes and a desperate need to feel like a victim. Meanwhile, her own PR team was feeding the tabloids like it was an all-you-can-eat buffet of spin and lies. It's tragic how far removed she is from the reality of the situation, believing she could control the world's perception of her by simply making things up as she went along.
Before, who planted that story that Blake Lively was fat shamed? Who was at that meeting knowing about what was going on? That was a meeting that took place in Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' apartment, and there were very few people there. So of course it was someone from Blake Lively's team. Except
perhaps the most embarrassing moment for Blake came when her narrative about crisis strategist Judd Wallace completely collapsed. She confidently claimed in an amended complaint that Wallace had orchestrated a smear campaign against her starting on August 7th. There was just one tiny problem. Wallace wasn't even hired until August 9th. The media firestorm had already exploded 2 days before he even entered the building. Blake fabricated a whole conspiracy out of thin air because her ego couldn't handle the fact that her own strategy had failed. She expected the public to just nod along with her timeline, but people actually checked the dates. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a calculated manipulation of facts that exposed her as the true source of the chaos.
Have given Blake Lively's team what they want so far. I'm thinking that they have everything that they need from Jennifer Abel. They did actually take her phone and everything that was on there, so what they're looking for now.
When you look at the actual documents her team waved around as proof of a conspiracy, the story gets even more pathetic. They pointed to a social combat plan as if it were a weaponized plot, but it was really just a standard $30,000 marketing package for managing negative comments online. It's the kind of thing every influencer has on retainer. Blake tried to make a routine business proposal look like a coordinated attack, even dragging in a more expensive option called Quote 1 that was never even purchased. She was basically reading a restaurant menu and claiming food poisoning from a dish she never ordered. It's a level of desperation that shows her lawyers were banking on the public being too distracted or too lazy to look at the actual evidence.
Basically saying that the Wayfair parties haven't given them enough. They want more. They want to find this evidence. And as I said so many times before. But here's the twist.
The real motivation behind this entire mess isn't justice. It's a raw, unadulterated power grab. Multiple insiders have confirmed that Blake didn't just want to star in the movie, she wanted to own it. She wanted full creative control over everything, from the lighting to the casting, and she was already scheming to direct the sequel. The tipping point came when Justin Baldoni refused to hand over the raw, uncut footage known as the dailies. That refusal was the spark that set off her rage. Without those dailies, she didn't have the leverage she needed to manipulate the final product. Suddenly, the set became toxic, grievances were manufactured, and the legal threats started flying like confetti. It was never about the art, it was always about who held the whip.
Behavior of people that are just doing this to harass people is to often file a ton of motions, to confuse the judge, to rack.
Blake's vision for her career seemed to be an attempt to become the next Reese Witherspoon, but she ended up becoming a cautionary tale instead. She treated the film set like a personal Pinterest board, demanding input on camera angles and set designs that were far outside her role as an actress. When Sony and the production companies didn't hand her the keys to the kingdom, she turned to the courts to try and force their hand. She weaponized gossip and legal filings to create a narrative where she was under siege, hoping people wouldn't notice she was the one creating the siege. But Hollywood is a small town, and word quickly spread that working with Blake meant dealing with a master of chaos who would sue you the moment you said no.
There's a lot of reasons and ways she's been misusing the court system, and one of them is through subpoenas. We've already know that she abused the subpoena process, in my opinion, by filing that sham lawsuit, Van Zandt Inc., which sued no one, about reputational harm that was caused.
The legal stunt show she's been running across America is finally hitting a wall, and the judges are not holding back their disdain. Judge Lyman slammed her for filing in the wrong jurisdictions and stated straight up that her legal team was abusing the process to harass people. That's a heavy accusation from a federal judge, but it fits the pattern of someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them. Blake isn't seeking a fair trial. She's trying to confuse the court and drive up the costs for her opponents. It's a strategy designed to make the other side give up out of pure exhaustion. However, instead of winning, she's just proving to everyone that she's willing to break the system to satisfy her own vanity.
Campaign. So Ryan and Blake are still alleging a coordinated defamation campaign against them involving planting negative stories in the press. So they want the Wayfarer to show their communications with.
There is a very clear pattern of behavior here that many are comparing to the Amber Heard playbook. It involves weaponizing the system, faking a victim narrative, and hoping the public is too distracted by the glitz and glamour to notice the inconsistencies. The only difference is that Blake's poker face is failing her. Every time she loses emotion, which is happening almost weekly at this point, she looks like she's about to snap. This isn't just a bad legal strategy, it's a woman unraveling in front of the entire world. She is flailing, trying to grab onto anything that will make her look like the hero again, but every move she makes only digs her hole deeper. The theatricality of it all is becoming impossible to ignore.
Her own choices in this case, in this story, blew up. So she has filed a ton of motions to compel. She has filed tons of subpoenas, she's seeking tons of subpoenas. She's trying to get another Jones Works employee that quit, that was involved.
One of the most shocking aspects of this case is how Blake's team has handled sensitive legal boundaries. They've been accused of repeatedly trying to break attorney-client privilege, demanding access to internal investigations and private messages they have no right to see. It's as if Blake believes her celebrity status gives her a backstage pass to the entire legal system. When she tried to access protected files from Wayfarer, the judge didn't just say no, he basically asked if she was serious. She argued that the company waived their privilege just by defending themselves, a logic so flawed it's almost laughable. She is persistently and loudly wrong, yet she continues to push these boundaries as if repeating a lie will eventually make it true.
She fabricated a smear campaign, pressured legal firms, and submitted false motions simply to maintain her control.
The harassment didn't stop with Baldoni. She even went after his law firm, demanding their bank records and influencer payments. It's a rom-com fever dream where she thinks she's the clever lead uncovering a massive conspiracy, but in reality, she's just a bully with a subpoena. The law firm hit back hard, accusing her of using the discovery process as a PR stunt to keep herself in the headlines. They aren't wrong. This entire crusade has been about maintaining a spotlight that was starting to fade. She's not filing motions, she's throwing tantrums in PDF format. One legal analyst even called her approach litigation by tantrum, a term that has quickly become the unofficial title of this entire disaster.
While Blake is melting down in the courtroom, the rest of Hollywood is quietly backing away from the wreckage. The shift in public opinion has been brutal and very visible. Whitney Cummings recently roasted her on a podcast, calling her everyone's messy mom who needs to be the center of attention at 2 in the morning. It's an accurate takedown of the chaotic energy Blake has been bringing to every red carpet and court hearing lately. She has become the guest that no one invited but everyone is gossiping about in the kitchen. The industry is losing its tolerance for her brand of drama, and the consequences are starting to manifest in her professional life in a very real way. The first major blow to her career came from Netflix, who quietly pulled her Conversations with Courage special from their release calendar. There was no big announcement, just the sudden disappearance that spoke volumes. It was a clear sign that major platforms are starting to see her as radioactive. They don't want to be associated with someone who is constantly in the headlines for legal meltdowns and smear campaigns. This isn't just bad optics, it's career euthanasia. When a giant like Netflix decides to delete you from their memory before you can embarrass them further, you know the situation is dire. Blake thought she was untouchable, but she's finding out the hard way that everyone has a limit.
Sony, who was once one of her biggest supporters, has also gone suspiciously silent. They pushed for her to lead the film despite the red flags, but now there are no updates, no sequel announcements, and zero public support for their star. Blake thought she could force their hand by creating media drama, but studios hate a mess more than anything else. No one in Hollywood wants to be dragged into a personal vendetta disguised as creative activism. By turning a movie set into a battlefield, she has signaled to every other studio that hiring her comes with a massive legal and PR headache. She is quickly becoming a liability that no one is willing to insure. The influencers and entertainment reporters who once praised her are now picking apart her every move. From YouTube commentary to Instagram Reels, the narrative has shifted from her being a fashion icon to being a master of chaos in designer heels. People are no longer looking at her outfits. They're looking at her timeline discrepancies and her failed legal motions. Every headline reeks of vanity and a desperate need for control. She underestimated the public's ability to see through the spin, and now she's facing a wave of criticism that she can't sue into silence. The audience isn't laughing with her anymore. They are laughing at the absurdity of her self-inflicted downfall. Even the legal definitions are working against her now. A judge recently ruled that the term smear campaign, which she has built her entire case around, isn't even actionable in court. Public statements, even critical ones, don't count as defamation unless there is proof of outright lies made with malicious intent. Blake has no proof, no receipts, and no standing. All she has is a trail of documents that lead right back to her own apartment. In her desperate attempt to prove she was being attacked, she accidentally revealed that she was the one throwing the punches. Her strategy was to scream loud enough to drown out the facts, but the silence in the courtroom after her motions are denied is deafening.
Blake is currently trapped in a loop of her own making, swinging at shadows and pointing fingers at anyone who won't hand her the crown. She is burning bridges faster than she can build new ones, and the people she's dragging through the mud are starting to fight back. Her reputation as a collaborative artist is gone, replaced by an image of a diva with too much money and not enough self-awareness. She thought she could control the story forever, but the story has flipped, and now she's the villain in her own scripted reality. The carefully curated fiction she spent months building has been dismantled by the very legal system she tried to weaponize for her own gain.
The most tragic part of this entire saga is that Blake still doesn't seem to get it. She continues to double down on her failures, demanding apologies from people who owe her nothing and filing more paperwork to cover up the previous mistakes. It's a downward spiral that is painful to watch. She is so far removed from reality that she actually believes she is winning, even as her projects are canceled and her peers distance themselves. Her vision of reality is a house of cards, and the wind is picking up. Every accusation she makes and every motion she files is just another layer of noise designed to hide the fact that she lost control of her career long ago. In her desperate attempt to remain the hero of her own story, Blake Lively has become the industry's most glaring cautionary tale. Hollywood will tolerate a lot, egos, scandals, and even massive feuds, but it has zero patience for someone who tries to weaponize the legal system to settle a creative score. By trying to force her way into the director's chair through lawsuits and PR stunts, she ended up losing the one thing she valued most, her reputation. The tragedy isn't that she lost her case, it's that she truly believed she could manipulate her way back to the top. Now, as the dust settles, the only thing left is a trail of burnt bridges and a public that is no longer buying the act.